Today's topic is how do you buy Bitcoin futures on Thinkorswim or TD Ameritrade. So TD Ameritrade merged together with Thinkorswim. They're using their platform and they have Bitcoin futures and had some customers asking how do you buy Bitcoin futures. So here's a tutorial on how to do just that. It's important to note that to do this, you need a brokerage approval, and this is the same for everywhere. So I don't actually use TD Ameritrade myself. I do use it for some clients. For interactive brokers, you have to get approval as well. So it's a similar process no matter which brokerage you use. You do have to have margin enabled. You do have to have some account minimum. I think interactive brokers, the minimum is 10,000. You do have to have futures trading approval. And there might be one extra step for Bitcoin. In often case, you have to call some number, and they're pretty responsive. It's important also to note that in TD Ameritrade's case, the margin requirement for Bitcoin is 1.5 times the exchange margin requirement. So let's take a look at this. I have this image here. So just blowing up this image. The source is Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That's the CME. And the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, that's CBOE. So they both have Bitcoin futures. The CME one is a big one, right? So one CME Bitcoin futures is equivalent to 5 actual Bitcoins. So let's say Bitcoin is 10,000. That's basically like $50,000 worth of Bitcoin, and that's on one contract, right? So this is kind of like for like the big guys. You don't If you have a small account, you don't want to play with the CME version, which the ticker is BTC. Um, for the average retail investor, even one contract for the XBT symbol, which is under the CBOE, that's equivalent to one entire Bitcoin. So like if Bitcoin were 10,000, then one Bitcoin futures contract with the CBOE would be 1 Bitcoin. So it's like 1-to-1 ratio. But the main benefit is really this margin thing. Notice the maintenance margin as well as the initial margin is less than 50%, right? So what that means is for a $10,000 Bitcoin, if you had $10,000, normally you could just buy 1 Bitcoin, right? But with futures and this margin, you could actually borrow money. So with $10,000, you can buy a little more than 2 Bitcoin, with your $10,000, right? So it's just like you're more than double your buying power. So if you're kind of like cash strapped and you want to have a big position, but you just don't have the cash to do it, and you're willing to take the risk of things going against you, as well as the upside, then you can do this 2.2 ratio. So for $10,000, you can buy a little bit more than 2 Bitcoins, rather than 1. So it's a little bit more than twice the buying power. And that's with the CME, the bigger one, it's also the same thing, 43% initial margin. Now, they say that for TD Ameritrade, the margin requirement is 1.5 times. So instead of 43% or 44%, it's actually 66%. So now instead of buying with $10,000, instead of buying 2.2 Bitcoins, you can only buy like, 1.8 Bitcoins, right? So you buy, it's the amount of leverage you can get through TD Ameritrade is a little bit less, though it's still pretty good. It's better than, buying Bitcoin on its own, in terms of a position size. So that's the little background on the Bitcoin futures. These are the two big ones. And so what does that mean with the Thinkorswim platform? So here's this is a simulated account that I just opened up. So if you were to open a paper account, you'd see exactly the same. If you were to buy Bitcoin futures, you would want to, these are the different tabs you have. You want to go to trade, and for options, you would go to all products, right? You would type in some like ticker like SPY, and then you can see the options exchange. But for futures, you want to go to futures trader, and you can see, here's your S&P 500 ES. You got your Nasdaq NQ. You got YM, which is the Dow, TF, which is the Russell. And what you could do is you type in, according to that chart we showed you earlier, uh, which is, right here, XBT, right? So that's the one you want to use. You could type in BTC for the big one, but let's just type in slash XBT, and you'll notice that it, pops up, right? Right now the Bitcoin price is around 8,500, so you could confirm that that's indeed what you want. They have different, monthly futures contracts. The most up-to-date one, you would probably just click this one, and you could purchase it. Here on the bottom says, uh, well, you could, go here, you say, you click buy, and you could say buy single. So you want buy one single futures contract. You notice at the bottom, this number changed to 8,500-ish. And so if you wanted to purchase this XBT, then you click the confirm and send button, and you look, you want to confirm. You want to buy one XBT M8, so M is, probably represents the month, at 8,500 limit. You could change it to market if you wanted to. Right, so to change it to market, you'd have this order here. This part here is limit that needs to change to market. So you change this to market. So now you have market June. This is the month of the futures contract, and that's probably what the M corresponds to. You click confirm and send. Now you have market, and the cost could be $2.25. Buying power effect 3,633. And you think about 8,500, right? So you take half of that, that's about 4,200. And this number is a little bit less. So it's possible that this number is kind of like the amount your buying power is reduced by, which is the margin we talked about, which is that 44% of where it's trading at. And so that this is, my guess is what that number represents. So reduces your total margin, your buying power effect by this amount. And so it's kind of good if you want to buy, let's say you want to buy like 2 Bitcoin, right? So you change this to 2, right? And you click confirm, and it's like, for $7,000 in a reduction of your buying power, you can buy 2 Bitcoin, and that's still less than the price of Bitcoin, which is 8,500. All right, so that's why, like, futures allow you to buy a leveraged amount of Bitcoin. And so if you wanted to buy 2, reduce your buying power by that amount, you could just click send. And I would imagine there it says filled. So once you see the word filled in your account, then this tells you that you actually have it. So now you want to look at your portfolio. You go to monitor, your positions, right? These are your positions. You now have an XBT, which is the Bitcoin futures symbol, and your trade was here, and this is the buying power that it reduced. PNL, that's for the day. That's not necessarily from your purchase price. But the number that matters to you is the net liquidation, right? That's how much money you actually have. So this paper account started with 100,000, and now it's at a little bit less due to transaction costs and stuff like that. Maybe you're buying at the ask when you're doing a market order, and so you're always down a little bit at first. So you can follow along with the monitor and the chart. Let's see, if you type in XBT, yes, you could get a chart of Bitcoin here in case you're not already tracking it somewhere else. So this is I'm new to this platform, and already I was able to put in a trade, find out how to track my position, and find out how to get a chart on it. So what I'm basically showing is that it doesn't matter which platform you use, they all have relatively the same functionality, excluding some extra stuff that some platforms have that others don't. My understanding is that Thinkorswim has a lot of extra stuff, and a lot of stats and stuff in case you like that stuff. But for basic purposes, Interactive brokers also has this. It's a little bit different because you use a symbol GXBT instead of XBT instead of slash XBT. Um, but trading futures here again, the one thing you want to note is that the margin requirement is as the website says 1.5 times higher than the exchange margin requirement, and that 1.5 times higher translates into this 44% versus for TD it's 66%. Now I probably had to do some more digging into the numbers on to confirm whether that it was actually 66% or 44% because it looks like the buying power reduction was 7,000. It also could be due to this being a simulated account instead of a real account. But the whole point is that buying futures allows you to get access to Bitcoin at a cheaper price and still have control a large amount of Bitcoin or larger amount if you wanted to. So that's just one of the benefits of futures trading, but also one of the risks. So if it goes down by a certain amount, your losses are amplified as well. So definitely something to keep in mind. With that, I'll leave you with a final chart of where Bitcoin is currently. And we just popped out over this downtrend line and hovering in this area, 8,400 around then. So we'll see what happens with Bitcoin.